Nick, my name's Alex Hardy, and I'm the Business Development Manager at the School of Sustainable Food and Farming, easy for me to say, here at Harper Adams University. I'll also briefly introduce shortly our speaker today, who is Nick Davies from Two Sisters. He'll be leading today's session in partnership with our delivery partners, Trinity Global Farm Pioneers, who've kindly hosted today's webinar. So for those of you that might not be familiar, the School of Sustainable Food and Farming is an academic and commercial collaboration between Harper Adams University, Morrison's Supermarkets, McDonald's UK and Ireland, and the National Farmers Union. The school has a shared vision of educating and inspiring farmers to achieve net zero within a sustainable farming and food system. This is the 5th webinar in our series organised by the school, and we'll be hosting further webinars and training events in the coming months. So please do look out for details of those on social media and in your email inboxes. We would love to hear from you as part of this session, so do please post comments and questions in the Zoom webinar chat there. As I say, there is a comments box. We'd be delighted if you'd join in and ask questions. But what we are going to do is leave those questions till the very end of the session to allow Nick to give his presentation. So if you could patiently wait for the end, we'll come to your questions then. And so I did promise I'd introduce Nick. So Nick is the Group Agricultural Director at one of Britain's largest food producers, that's Two Sisters Food Group. Nick has a wealth of experience in the agri-food sector, from farm to retail, food service, restaurant and export, covering beef, lamb, pork, and now, of course, chicken, where he plays a pivotal role in the processing of over 6 million chickens every week. Two Sisters has a deep commitment to sustainable environmental practices. And Nick takes a holistic approach to production challenges, delivering results utilising data analysis, technology, and the right team around him, who share a common vision to do the right thing every day. Nick is keen to drive change that delivers for his business and come up with solutions that link value, sustainability and productivity at the same time as satisfying consumer needs. With local and global challenges creating further challenges and opportunities, the role Nick and his team play becomes increasingly important as the world adapts again to unprecedented opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nick Davies. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk this afternoon. If it's anything like with you, it is with me at Birmingham. After leaving Wales this morning, it's raining, and it's still raining, even 9 floors up in central Birmingham. So I'm sure that's going to affect the harvest, but there'll be some looking forward to get the grass growing. Yeah, so thanks for letting me speak today. I think before I start, I think it's really important that we are given these forums to, share some of the ideas and challenges we have, because I think that enables us to see a pathway through some of the opportunities and challenges we have as an industry, let alone as individual businesses. And there are those elements where we can tackle those challenges pre-competitively, collectively, to ensure that we deliver on some of these national and global goals. So what I'm going to do today is give you a flavour of what we're doing at Two Sisters, and everything you see today, with the exception of technology, we're actually leading ourselves. We're a relatively small team of people, and we're really proud that when I joined the business 3 years ago, a lot of what you see is new from that. So in a time of adversity and challenge, and that brings opportunity. I'm a great believer in that. So hopefully, Alex, my screen will work, and this will go into presentation mode. Is that with you? Great stuff. Okay, so when Alex spoke to me, it was around delivering high quality, high welfare chicken sustainably. So hopefully, I'm not sure like you, I haven't had my lunch, but that's certainly making me hungry and shows the delicious products that we can achieve in our industry. So what are we going to cover? And apologies, this is a lot of wordy discussion points, but basically it's around the partnerships that we at Two Sisters have, the current challenges and opportunities, why chicken is a healthy source of protein in a balanced diet. You know, why do we choose that? Why do our consumers and partners continue to see chicken as a great meal occasion? Defining what we mean. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and on the definition of some of the words that we use. I'm always keen to really tease that out in some of my discussions to actually really know why somebody has an opinion they've got, because my definition may be very different to theirs. Focus on is integrating sustainable intent. We don't know what we don't know, so we can only hope that what we do know comes to fruition, and what we don't know, we plan really well to deliver. I'll touch on AI as and that is avian influenza, not artificial intelligence, and then a bit on carbon, and then I will revert to technology as an aid to our stock people and how we're going to use that going forward, on how we are using it to drive our business forward, and the summary around people and planet. Now, firstly, I want to just start with our people. Now, this picture sort of really does bring to light some recent events around. I've made a comment both publicly and internally quite regular around we aren't anything without our people, and the people are really at the heart of what we do, whether that be people from our genetics, where everything starts, all the way through to our hatcheries, to our growers, to our rearers, to our catch teams, to our drivers, processing teams, cleaners. And when we all are custodians of producing a great quality tasting product, we pride ourselves in ensuring that we work collectively as a team. And you can see on those pictures there on the top left, if the beady eyes of you will notice that is Ranjit Singh, our president and owner of Two Sisters. And Ranjit's been out with me on a few occasions now, several occasions, in fact, because really does truly believe that going out and visiting the farmers, seeing what's going on, ensuring we understand what is the forefront of the challenges that we face, so we can then be at the forefront of actual farming practice and continue to be a sustained deliverer of a great quality product. But not only that, we're actually really interested in bringing the people who don't get a chance necessarily go to farm all that often. So one of the pictures, there's a team of technologists and restaurant people who really do want to understand what we do. So I think it's really important about how we connect our supply chain and ensure that we give people the opportunity to learn and inform with facts. And yeah, okay, maybe I get a little bit emotional at times around, because we really pride ourselves in what we do, but actually take aside the emotion, take away the assumption, and really truly have a really open and honest discussion around how we produce chicken. And then that means that those people can then go into their, whether it be retail, restaurant, or any other part of the supply chain that we operate in, can go back and factually talk around what they do. And you'll see the people in poultry recently joining one of our sites at Scunthorpe, and really giving an insight into what processing is all about, looking at the carcass breakdown, because most people spend their lives assembling a product, and we obviously spend our time, once it hits our process, de-assembling, and obviously that's really crucial to ensuring a great process in respect to the carcass balance. And then the picture there in the middle of the young lady, which my youngest daughter will kill me if she realizes that I've used this picture, that had a group of friends over. And she said, "Oh, Dad, when can we go chicken farming with you?" And I was explaining at this point it was AI, and we shut the farms down from a biosecurity point of view. But one day I'll take you. And I actually turned around and thought, do you know what, I can probably do better than that as a dad and actually as an agricultural director. So we actually did a virtual reality tour of one of the farms, and that just has snowballed now, because we're able to now not only give people a view of what a farm looks like, but actually what it feels like walking up a shed when the birds are at their growing stages. And we've actually had people tentatively walking forward and gone, oh, sorry. And they're actually talking to the birds, thinking they've tripped over the birds. It's that real. I think the only thing that we need on there is something where it can actually produce the same environmental smell as a chicken shed, and we'll be somewhat nearly there. So I think that when you look at this, bringing the supply chain together, ensuring there's factual, informed information coming through, looking at our farmers of how they're diversified into AD plants, bringing young people in, the growers that we have, ensuring that they actually get visited regular to ensure they are aware of the best practices, and actually they've got somebody to talk to, because sometimes it can be, an isolated place, and especially around COVID and AI, that can lead to that. So any forms of communication we can use to be remotely has got to be really at the forefront of what we do. So I'm really proud of this, the open, honest transparency, being able to factually talk about what we do is really, really important to ensuring people get a true image of how we produce chicken and a great quality product. Now, as an integrator, I've tried to simplify this, and from our rearing farms, breeder farms, and hatcheries. So, for the guys who are on the call, apologies for teaching grandmother to suck eggs, because you'll know all of this. But for the guys which are new to chicken, when you actually look at it, we've got our partners who do all of our breeding and then hatch all our eggs. And then we obviously have a different production tier that depends on which customer actually requires what production tier. And then obviously we will then process those birds across our sites across the UK, and then further processing. And I suppose we're quite lucky in our business that not only do we actually produce chicken, we also de-assemble it from a fresh point of view. So your small, medium, large chicken. But we also then take it to added value. So when you go into the retail shops, into restaurants or into food service, and you have a marinade, or you have an added value with a crumb over it, it might or may well come from one of our businesses. But ultimately, we are significant partner within the UK poultry industry, producing over 6 million chicken, as Alex said earlier. So when you actually look at us, around 13,000 colleagues and 380 grower partners. And the reason I always use, some people just use the word, well, they're growers for us. Well, they've got to be a grower partner for me, because they need to understand exactly every single part of that food chain, because if they do, we can share those experiences, navigate the challenges, celebrate the successes together. And actually the partnership is really important to me in what we deliver. So when you actually look at that, when you look at each one of these production tiers, they're very much regionally based across the UK. And there you can see a selection of the different production systems on the far left-hand side here, of the different production systems that we operate in. Now, from a geographical point of view, that makes it really, really good in respect of when we have challenges from an AI point of view, because it means that we haven't got chicken all in one place. So you are reducing your risk to some degree and not totally. Also, from a regional point of view, it means strategically we've got hatcheries, we've got farms, and we've got processing sites which are regionally based to utilise and maximise the ability of labour. Now, post-COVID, obviously everybody aware that labour has been tighter than what it had been previously, and ensuring we have the great quality skilled labour that we need to process chicken is absolutely essential, and they are highly skilled staff. And I think sometimes that's a bit of a misconception around farming and processing, when it is highly skilled. When you look at the skills that the teams have with butchery skills, with knife skills, technical skills and all that, that is a highly skilled industry, which needs highly skilled workers. And also, when you look at the far right-hand side, we operate everything from Scotland through to Wales, down into the southwest and across to East Anglia. And again, I think that when you actually look at the regional distribution hubs, it fits really, really well to ensure that product gets to source in time, so we can make sure and ensure the quality and freshness of that product is optimum at all times. Now, I suppose some people would always turn around and say to me, what do you like doing and what do you prefer? At the end of the day, all of our chicken is produced to the highest standards we can possibly produce them to. And at the end of the day, I'm proud of every single production tier that we actually operate in, and so are our people. What we must remember with these regional supplies is that a lot of our farms have actually got not one, maybe two, sometimes even three houses. They have people's homes. Traditionally, I think we think of family farms as being very much beef and lamb and arable led, and it's a family unit. Our chicken farms are family units. Whether you've got a partner, you are married, whether you've got children, these are a home, and the guys live and breathe their chicken, and really proud to do that. And I think sometimes that people forget that is a family home at times. And I think that, the ability for our stock people to bring their children through the system and then they come and work for us, it's a great place to see that succession coming through when we've got the opportunity. So I suppose when you actually look at what makes great consumption of chicken, I thought it was actually what the main drivers, and this was just a short study that some of our insights team did, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I like the taste. And I had a chicken last night with the children, had a nice roast. And my youngest always has to have a Yorkshire pudding with it, so I'm sure that will please any Yorkshire people on the webinar today. But ultimately, they love the taste, great availability, a consistent protein of choice that the consumer knows can be available. Supporting, like in our place, we're supporting, getting up towards 400 farming business units, which are putting money back into local schools, local shops, local businesses, repairing cars, pieces of kit. When we look at what farming actually supports, it's by far more than just producing chicken. It's actually sustaining a local community, sustaining local schools. Sadly, we've just lost one of our local schools due to cutbacks. But actually, the more we actually can drive sustainable businesses in the local communities and rural entities, it's got to be at the heart of what we do, because many farmers are diversified, whether it be into eggs or whether it be into broilers. And I think, when you look at that circular impact, that's really, really what can actually help farmers actually be more sustainable. One of the things the consumers also said, because I can afford it more. I think sometimes even myself probably sit there, when was the last time I didn't and couldn't and wasn't able to afford meat as a meal occasion? Can't remember the last time. I'm really fortunate. But ultimately, it is a high quality, affordable protein. But ultimately, part of obviously our business is to ensure, when our teams are, feeding back, the challenges that we all face, because we are a farming business as well as a processor. So we have a massive investment and interest in making sure our farms are sustainable. But also, it's really important that our farmers get the opportunity, which they do, to speak directly to retailers. And we just recently had one of the senior buyers from a well-known leading retailer join us at a conference in the Southwest, and was able to talk around what they're doing to support chicken and British farmers, which I think is really crucial. But ultimately, some people have turned around and said to save money because they see the versatility in it, they see the convenience in it compared to some other proteins. And I've never been in a view of being about a competition between proteins, because we've got many farms that do a great job, growing beef and lamb. But I think that let the consumer make the choice to make sure that the elements of convenience and quality and value is there, and ultimately great healthy product. We all know that it's low fat, and when you actually look at the versatility of sandwiches the next day, or a roast, or convenience when it comes to marinades, and that it's a fantastic product. It's really interesting, isn't it, when you actually look at it, from a welfare point of view. Sorry, I was then trying to think of my numbers ahead of myself and I'd forgotten my number. But when you look at number 8 down there from this survey, so people would turn around and say, oh, animal welfare at number 8. But that doesn't mean to say it's 8 times less important. What it actually means is that there is a given that the consumer has got trust in our welfare practices. They've got trust in what we do. They've got trust in the actual place, whether it be retail, food, whatever. I think people just commonly sort of default back to retail, but our industry is so much bigger than just saying retail. We've got a lot of good restaurant partners, food service, and export customers. But ultimately, welfare is still so important. But actually, it's a given. It's ensuring that high welfare is practiced every single day. But actually, when you look at the pressures that, the interest rates and all those sorts of things, and COVID and post-Brexit has put on everybody, it just means that the focus in respect of the purse, the affordability is more of a focus. And then ultimately, people want to know we're looking after the planet, of which I'll go through shortly. But ultimately, that was just a snapshot of a local survey that we did, just to say, why are you eating more poultry? But some great results. I think as well, what's really important is that we actually define the defining of what we mean. And I think that in our industry, and I don't think it's exclusive to chicken, is that what do we mean by high welfare? What do we mean by quality? And what do we mean by whether it be net zero, neutral, and all the offsetting, where it's pre or post LUC? There's so many different, I suppose, meanings behind what people determine it to be. And for me, I've put just a few logos up there, and I suppose I must make a public apology that if I've missed anybody out there, apologies. It was just a selection for illustrative reasons. But you actually look at the core of everything that our farmers do, which is core red tractor standards. And fundamentally, we produce a vast majority of our chickens under the red tractor logo, and the farmers do a fantastic job and ensuring and maintaining and constantly tweaking practices to ensure they optimize the welfare and the production of their birds. And it's really interesting when you go and speak to our farmers, they turn around and say, my birds, not the birds, it's my birds. And actually the ownership over the welfare around the training of the staff that goes under that is so important. And that's why I'm encouraged that when I recently spoke to Alex, that the School of Sustainable Food and Farming is around sharing a lot of those ideas around sustainable practices. And ultimately, sustainability is a proxy for efficiency or not. Let's face it. When we actually look at it, with the better we do our job, the more sustainable we are, the more efficient we are, and the more likelihood we are of being able to have enough to reinvest and go forward. And so I'm really intrigued when people turn around and say, what should the standard be? And my view is that we are led by our consumer. That at the point where we actually stop leading, our consumer stops leading, we'll just increase waste, we'll increase cost, And I think that we are led by our consumers. Now, don't get me wrong, there's opportunities there within industry where our farmers can lead. But ultimately, we are proud of what we do there. So again, enhanced welfare certified standards, it's all independently verified on an annual basis. We are, willingly, openly saying to our assurance bodies, when they need to inspect, yeah, absolutely. And the guys really value the conversations that go on with those independent auditors, to actually feel proud of what they do to produce good, top quality, high protein diet. So quality, again, quality means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but obviously optimizing the environments they're in, where, ensuring ventilation practices, litter controls, looking at the genetics on how we can tackle emerging diseases, current diseases, whether it be viral or bacterial challenge. That's no different to us as a human population. I don't know about anyone else on the call, but maybe a lad who came out of Norfolk is a bit hardy, but I don't take pills. I don't like taking pills. And maybe I've got a higher resistant level. But ultimately, where we need to investigate and get our vets involved and treat birds, we will treat them, but that's to maintain the health and the welfare of those birds. But when we actually have a lot of governance and a lot of measures in place, we don't wait. We are positively reacting, where we can see water levels, humidity, temperatures altering in those sheds, and the guys are tweaking the controls to make sure that the conditions our birds are kept in are optimized at every single point to ensure that quality is at the forefront of what they do. And quality for me is a measurement that our consumers still have the trust in the fact that they are still buying chicken, and the fact that they still buy a great quality product. And at the end of the day, we must, I suppose, look at the point of the environmental impact. Now, depends on what sort of production system that you opt for, what you run, depends on the environmental impact. Now, by default, when we have organic or free range birds, you're looking at 70 and 56 days. But ultimately, from a carbon point of view, that increases the number of days that bird is on the ground, increases the amount of feed that it eats, and ultimately it does put its carbon footprint up. But at the end of the day, that's up to the consumer to ensure that they're informed around what the decision of buying that product is, the impact it has. And actually, the important part is how we then try and help our customers and our consumers mitigate some of those increases in carbon. Now is a bit perverse, isn't it, where we put chicken on the ground and we grow it longer, with the better chicken commitment, and yet then that brings its own challenges with a higher footprint. But for me, that says, well, if that consumer is prepared to invest in that by choice, and that's what they actually command as their product, then it's up to us to then look at ways we can investigate to tackle those issues. But actually looking at that all in the round, it's how we tackle all of that, whether it's to do with ensuring welfare is enhanced every single day, ensuring quality is there, and ensuring welfare, environmental protection is maintained. That's what we do, live and breathe every day. And the important thing for me is my guys within my team handle that. They aren't separate teams. They live and breathe the farming entity. They live and breathe the customer. So actually they're able to bring it together. And actually, I suppose Alex will laugh here now, 3 of those actually now are actually ex-Harper Adams people. So I'm sure that's a good advocate for Harper Adams this afternoon as well. Looking things on a circular piece, and this is what I've just said, some of the areas that we're looking and investigating, it doesn't matter whether it's sustainable feed ingredients, innovation in breeding, better poultry sheds in respect of innovation, in respect of what's out there and what's really leading the market, diversification in energy, how our farmers are actually using AD plants to generate heat and electricity and gas in respect of being able to maintain and control some of the input costs there are now. And when you look at transportation and ensuring that whether it's green diesel, whether it's new modern refrigerated motors, whether it's looking at some of the challenges we face with the desperate transport controls around hot or cold temperatures. I think for me as well, I'm just a simple person, that it's about not allowing the human emotion to go over what is not backed by science, what's not backed by data. And I know that I'm quite vocal at times around, whilst research is great, we do need more of it to be UK based. There's quite a bit of research out there which comes from other parts of the world, and there's nothing like giving it the good old UK variability in weather, and ensuring that actually we have UK research for UK growers and farmers that actually can truly say this is actually gone through the UK systems. Looking at substrates and replacements for and alternative proteins is really key. I know that I'm constantly being told, tomorrow, bang, what happens, like we had with the Ukraine, and something happens. How do we protect our industry? How do we continue to ensure that, we can use UK growers for UK products, for UK feed? Really interesting point for me. And this is where I suppose I really think outside the box and think, well, at the end of the day, we're looking with nitrogen prices and people looking at the environmental impact of straight nitrogen. You're looking at the prices where maybe nitrogen production in the UK is depleting. But also for me, how do we look at, nitrogen fixing crops and so forth? Yes, okay, they might not have the tonnage maybe as what cereal, but actually how much nitrogen fixing is that worth when we have the challenges of what we have, whether it be environmental, cost, and so forth. And had a fantastic conversation just recently at one of the shows around, how nutrient management and how we handle that, and how we better utilize, poultry manure, and some great work going on there to be able to showcase how one important from a nutrient point of view poultry manure can be, but also ensuring it's obviously used responsibly. Some great initiatives coming up in my Welsh borders, Herefordshire areas, where people are looking to make sure we can maximise that even more. And ultimately, it doesn't matter whether, I think a lot of people concentrate on packaging within product, but also a lot of our agri consumables are wrapped in plastic. How do we, as an industry, make sure we are more environmentally friendly around the packaging? So I think it's would be remiss around not mentioning the fact that, with 187 cases around, with our farmers and the stress that AI, I mean, I joined the business at the height of COVID, or when COVID began, and then obviously you've gone through one of the or two seasons. I'm not sure if actually even there is such a thing as a season with AI anymore. And there's stresses and strains that puts on all our people. And I think that's something which is really, really important to me, is that when we've faced some of the biggest challenges of our time, whether that be through AI, whether it be through COVID and all the changes to Brexit, our people are absolutely at the forefront, because they're the guys who are absolutely managing it every day. When we've got farmers who it was hard to get insurance, risk went through the roof, stress went through the roof, bank loans have to be repaid, resource challenges around labour being tight, and then ultimately the cost that is to actually ensure that they can continue to produce was also really at the forefront. And then when you actually look at what the consumer said, it's a really affordable value protein, and ensuring that where inflation is, where it is that ensuring that we can actually then ensure that we can maximize the return back to the farmers where and when we can, whether that be through efficiencies or cost recovery. Really interesting though is when you're obviously trading commodities and you're trading X period ahead of yourself, the lag of which you're picking it up. And it's people will say to me, we're in deflation. Well, deflation from where? Is it deflation from last year, or is it deflation from pre-COVID? And I think that's really important, that we don't forget that actually the period of tough times that we've been through, you look at some of the points I've made there, when you look at our 50% reduction in exportable products into the EU, that was purely off the back of the point of when we actually had transit routes that we couldn't go through because AI had sparked off, and the new export health certificates weren't allowing us to export. If we'd actually driven along a road that happened to come into a zone, we weren't anywhere near the farms. Now, luckily, common sense has prevailed, and we've got some good responses there. APHA, from a farmer's point of view, getting us as licenses, and I can only speak for ourselves. I got phone calls at 10 at night, and we actually got licenses that night ready for the morning. When our catchers are getting out of bed at 12 o'clock at night, ready to catch birds. Ensuring that welfare is absolutely at the forefront of what we do. That's what we do. We are up at all hours of the night and day, reacting to challenges, reacting to situations that our industry has very little control over in respect to the endemic spread of AI in wild bird population, but managing it through great biosecurity. And everything we do to protect ourselves, we still have that challenge, which is directly outside of our control. But actually, the resilience there is absolutely fantastic. But ultimately, we do need a level of stability going forward to ensure people have the confidence to reinvest, to ensure that legislation is aligned to our imports. But not only that, I think I'm always conscious of somebody who's approved global meat productions, that we are actually factual in the way we talk, because there are a lot of systems out there that are comparable to the UK, and some do choose to bring that in. But ultimately, we must ensure that every product that is brought into the UK is comparable if we are to face a level playing field in respect to being able to be competitive and resilient in what we do. I think that's absolutely essential. Now, I think on the pre-warm-up, my colleagues smiled when they saw this graph. It looked like it was quite blank, which would be quite true. And I'm quite prepared through Alex to, if anybody has any questions offline, maybe take them through this separately. But ultimately, we've just completed a 2-year study into our carbon footprint, CO2 per kilogram of live weight, and you can see they are the different production tiers that we operate in, and that is the actual footprint for each bird that we actually produce. Now, you could turn around and say, wow, that's a massive difference, but ultimately that's what's important. There is choice, so the consumer can choose to buy that product at whatever footprint it has, and know that actually when I have a buyer come to me and say, Nick, I want to take on X number of organic birds, or I want to produce X number of free range, I want to lift my numbers by 50,000, actually responsibly agriculturally, what we do now is we actually provide them with a footprint and the total footprint that actually goes with that. And that's really important to me, because when you actually look at agri in isolation, it used to be, we'll ensure that we talk to everybody, but actually the detail was lost. And actually what we can do as two sisters, we can confidently go in and say, right, okay, that's the commercial guys do their conversations, but ultimately I make sure as part of that conversation, we talk around welfare, we talk around carbon footprinting, we talk around the impact of the actual effects that will have on the product. And I think that's really key. And I'm really keen on, as a director, to keep at the forefront of that, because I think it's really important that rounded approach. Now, some of the stuff that I'm allowed to do, and I suppose as a owner-operator company, I've been quite fortunate in the last 3 years. I've been allowed to not only learn a heck of a lot about chicken, but also support me in the innovation side. And what you'll see here is a mock-up of the actual footage below is real footage. You can just about see the chicks moving. And what I was really interested in is that, when you look at artificial intelligence, how can we use camera technology, sensors, to actually help train, continuously improve, inform. And also, I'm a great believer that in data, and if we take the emotion and the assumption out of a lot of the work that we do, and ultimately the vision what we had 3 years ago has actually been realized, and we're able now to use the vision technology and an algorithms that were written to really help understand the production systems we operate in, and ultimately look at areas that actually can inform us before the issue actually arises. And if you actually look on the 2020 to 21, and one of the things I spoke about at the Pig and Poultry Fair is that we practice what we preach. And ultimately, when you actually look at some of our production systems and what we can do, this is the level of technology that we've been going to. Now, when you actually look at all of that, it actually really, really does evolve around our farmers through FarmLink giving us the real best information, ensuring that the data that is actually reported every day. And I suppose one of the real lessons for our farmers is that, what does that really mean? Because at the end of the day, they're really proud of farming chicken. But actually, for me, if our birds are growing ahead of schedule, what do we do about that? What can we do if we actually have efficiency factors, which means that we may well have more chicken on the ground? How do we end up ensuring we can deal with those factors? So the more knowledge we've got ahead of ourselves, how do we start looking at behaviors of birds? And I don't know whether any of you are like me when you have a Fitbit and you've done so many steps. What does that actually tell us? Because as soon as you go into a shed, you don't naturally always see what's going on because you're disturbing and going up through the birds, checking the birds, which is absolutely right. But actually coming back from that and looking and using the machine vision learning can give us so much more insights to not replace or displace our stock people, but further give them the ability to see what they can't see and actually look at challenges that might come ahead of them so they can actually further improve. It can be used as a training aid. It can be used to ensure that we can look at the design of our buildings. And ultimately then, it can be used as an alert if should something go wrong or major heat sources appear in the night, halfway through the night unexpectedly. It can send a heat source back to the farmer and say, you've got a mass heat source in your shed, something's not quite right. So, that can be used from an alert point of view as well. Bringing that all together, and for the people who saw me present at the Pig and Poultry, this has all come to life, and we are delivering on what we've promised. And combining that with a carbon footprint is for each production tier is absolutely essential. But ultimately, go back to my point around ensuring we understand the definitions of what we're talking about. When we operate a carbon footprint, we operate to a past 2050 model, but we also footprint every single one of our farms. Whereas, maybe sometimes when I'm compared or the industry is compared, they're compared to a subset of data. It may well be a chosen group of farms that actually gets footprint, and then assumed values then get applied to farms. The importance and the accuracy of getting absolute every single farm mapped and ensuring that we have accurate footprints and we understand what is and what isn't included in data has got to be to the advantage of the UK farming industry. Because if we all agree to a common reporting standard, then as the UK, we have a better unified approach to tackling climate change collectively, because I'm not going to solve it on my own, but actually I will do my damnedest to do my bit and ensure that we improve where we can improve. But collectively, we are all reporting the same on the same methodology. That's got to help us to actually drive and tackle climate change challenges. And when we're looking and recording commonly, we can act commonly as well. So again, there's some pieces around the offer, the constraints on the shopper and what they can and can't afford. I don't know whether any of you guys have renewed your mortgage like me and didn't get in before the interest rates. I'm glad the Prime Minister has paid for the rest of her time, and that 2 weeks impacted on me, and I'm going to be paying for it for the rest of my mortgage. That aside, when you look at the diesel prices where they were, what I'm saving in diesel now alone is essentially paying for my electricity. Now, our farmers went and doubled their unit prices. Some of them quadrupled their unit prices they're paying. So when you look at all of that, all the efficiencies that we drive, all the hard work, all the determination to succeed, and then when you look at the interest rates, when you actually look at the market, when you look at the building trade slowed down, when you look at material inflation, when you look at the mills and the planings not coming through for sawdust, and all the challenges that brings with us, we're seeing this, and it's really sad to see that people are trading down into food banks and poverty is real. But the outlook, for me, around stable, affordable, high protein, the poultry offers that consumers continue to afford and trust. Our ability as an industry to work with agility is absolutely come to its fore. We've worked together with our wider industry partners. We had some fantastic conversations and meetings with PPC, NFU, and BMPA, and that to collectively come together on some of the challenges that we actually face. But there's nothing more powerful than the voice of the farmer, ensuring we get them in front of our customers so they can see firsthand the challenges that have been and hear the passion that our farmers got to drive great poultry production. But ultimately, we must invest in our people, and it is seen as an exciting career choice. Not just for today, but for tomorrow. Your general typicalization of the person that you needed, to me now is just doesn't exist. We need highly skilled people who can actually manage ventilation systems. Can then ensure that they secure the best practices to ensure the welfare of those birds is maintained. Ultimately, the planet. We've all got our act on this. We've got all the commitments which are made, whether they're 2030, 2040, 2050, we've all can play our part. But I think that, we're doing that. But ultimately, when you look at, the climate change and the sort of for the millennials and the Gen Zs and all of those things, environment is actually at the forefront. My 16-year-old even talks about it at home. Dad, what are you doing as a business? Which I think is great. But the level of detail they want is quite scary as well, compared to when I was younger. But ultimately, we need to make sure there's a financial return. We need to show the range of footprints is achievable. But we do have a rising population. Poultry, for me, is at the forefront of being able to ensure that we can keep a balanced, wholesome, healthy plate of choice, and the consumer still has choices, whatever that production tier may be. And so choice for me is that, I want to make sure our consumers have got that choice. And that's what we're doing finally in the respect of making sure that there is some detail around the footprints, and there's waterfalls there to show that what our commitments and how we're doing that up until 2040, 2050. So Alex, I think that was around about 45 minutes. So I think hopefully everybody found it interesting and a bit of a taste bite of what we're doing at Two Sisters, and that was just a snippet.
Thank you, Nick. That was really fascinating, which has resulted in us having a few questions to share with you, Nick, if you're all right with that. So I'll take them in no particular order, Nick, if that's okay. So we did have a question about chicken waste, which of course we all know is pretty topical now more than ever, I think. And the question was around how Two Sisters are helping farmers to reduce the environmental impact of chicken production, thinking about waste, Nick.
Yeah, so I'm going to say waste in respect of manure and chicken litter. And look, for a number of years now, we've had a significant input into electricity generation through manure. So over 60, roughly around about 65% of our total manure will go into electricity generation. and the rest of it will either be going into AD plants or responsibly application to to arable land. Now the team have been working with the catchment sensitive areas as well to map the farms where they are in catchment sensitive areas and ensure that whilst our farmers are the experts in arable production and they have all their manure management plans and and backed all up by assurance schemes to make sure that that is all applied to and adhered to, we are being part of that. And I think that, from what we see, our farmers are being responsible in their approach to that.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. This is an interesting one to change gear just ever so slightly, thinking further along the supply chain and on to the consumer, who ultimately are a huge player in what we're talking about in terms of the production systems. But this question is about food labeling, and we wondered if there were any plans to add the carbon cost of food to product labeling. Perhaps you're able, Nick, to offer any insight there with your connections within food service and retail.
Oh, that's a good one. So I think from a food labeling point of view, there's a lot going on at the moment around whether it's welfare labeling, whether it's environmental labeling, whether it's nutritional labeling, and all those sorts of things. And I just wonder whether it's just getting far too complicated. And at the end of the day, I think to be able to get down to product footprint, it is quite a mean feast in itself. Now we're working along with some of the wider industry on some of the initiatives that are coming out through food labeling, but I would turn around and say that there's a lot of companies still setting their baselines, they're still setting their reduction programs, and ultimately I think from the complexity around putting environmental labels on is, and maybe maybe it's me and I'm not intelligent enough on the food labeling side, but when you actually look at our footprint for 2021 will be modeled on the same footprint as 2020. And what I mean for that is that the 84% of the total footprint is feed. So ultimately, when we put our harvest year into our footprint year on year, if there is let's say a not so good harvest, and we take the brunt of a higher impact on our wheat and cereals, then ultimately, if I put it in against the 2020 harvest, then rerun it for the 2021, I will get what I'm in control of, which is essentially year-on-year production, but I'll also then get an output when I rerun it against what I'm not necessarily in control of, which is the weather when the harvest yields are actually noted. So I think that when you look at that and you start seeing environmental footprints like that, straight away, my fear would be that people use that negatively against the industry again, because they don't understand the nuances that go behind it. So am I all for ensuring people have the right information, accurate information, and is it important? Yes. I just wonder how far we will go to where we just have got so many things on a label that it actually detracts does people pay any attention to it? Are we, and so I think that, there's massive amounts, whether it's shelf end, whether it's communication through retail, food service, export, there's so much information there on websites where people are doing the right thing and showing where their footprints are and what they've done. So I think that at the end of the day, you look at the complexities of the supply chain as well when you start getting into ingredients levels. So when you look at maybe a raw product where, it's gone from A to B, maybe that's slightly easier. But actually, when you start bringing multiple ingredients together, then that's when the complexities start becoming so much, harder.
Yeah, I guess it's not dissimilar to the debate that's been bubbling up again in the last week or two around grams of food versus what's actually contained within the package, and making the consumer do too much work to find out exactly what they're eating. But your point is well taken in that is far-reaching. You know, what does the consumer want on the packaging? Are they interested in calorific density? Are they interested in nutrition? Are they interested in carbon? Are they interested in the environmental credentials of the packaging itself? There are lots and lots of different things to consider. That might be one that we might not solve today, Nick. But for the next question, and I'm conscious we don't have too much time, but looking again, just to pick up on what we were talking there about the carbon footprint specific to the work you're doing, Nick, does your footprint include carbon sequestration by trees and grassland in free range chickens, or is it specific to housed birds?
No, so the footprint so the different footprints you saw would be everything from free range organic, BCC, lower stocked, and red tractor. What we've not done at the moment is so there's 2 points to that, which I'll probably go slightly further than the sequestration. So we don't take any benefit of sequestration at all on the ranges, but also on top of that, what we've tried to do is look at because I suppose people from let's say a nature point of view just think of free range and organic because the ranges and the tree plantation and so forth. But what we've also done as a business is that we've also been able to get a biodiversity asset value for a subset of a number of farms which we've trialed. So I think that for me, what we will then do is look at the potential benefit of what that might be from a sequestration point of view. But no, we don't include it. We don't account for it. But also, I think what's more important is looking at, a lot of our farms do have trees, do have grassland, they do have hedgerows and all those things. And for me, it's around that biodiversity that those farms can give, not just thinking around organic and free range on ranges.
All right, Nick, thank you for that. We've just got time, I think, for one more question. Again, we've jumped around a bit, which is part of the fun of these types of sessions, isn't it? Because lots of people have got lots of different interests as they come to these sessions. But wondering if you could turn your thinking to insects and looking at protein, Nick, and within your supply chain. To improve environmental credentials. We know there's been quite a bit of work, in particular with laying hens here. A couple of companies, a Better Origin spring to mind. Just wondered if you're doing anything in that space, Nick, before we finish up.
Look, we'll always look in the spaces of, whether it be black soldier fly, alternative proteins and all those sorts of things. I suppose that for me, it's around, what are we trying to achieve? Are we a business which is producing great quality, highly valued chicken, or are we are we a waste stream in respect of, going that step further to produce black soldier flies? And, because I think that when you actually look at it, the primary function with the black soldier fly was around, especially in the places like the States now, was dealing with waste streams, but the output was actually black soldier fly. Now, when you look at what I'm really conscious of is when you look at, the scale of our business as well, when we look into projects like that, the scalability is relatively hard. Now, what I mean by that is that when we've looked at the work, the amount of resource and that we need to be able to produce what is relatively low tonnage rate, also when it's not approved within the UK to do it, how do we successfully, look at the meal and trial it when it's not approved? Okay, we can say, we could go abroad, we can do scientific trials and all of that, which is what we're doing. My also concern is for us, all the substrates that we've actually supplied to FERA to look at what the value of the substrate would be, we're absolutely great, and happy to support that. My concern is a lot of that substrate that we would supply into that chain already goes into a feed chain now. So actually, the more I take out of that to go into, say, black soldier or alternative protein supply for that, I'm actually then creating yet another competition where I'm taking confectionery out. So I'm conscious around, when I'm looking at these things and that as an ag director is the cause and consequence. So I suppose to actually answer your question, just to be clear, yes, we've absolutely costed black soldier fly. We've looked at it, and we will continue to watch the space.
Right, Nick, thank you so much. I'm doing a tiny poor job of managing our time here. I hope our webinar attendees haven't been cut off at 2 o'clock, but we are smack on 2 o'clock. So with that, Nick, I want to say a huge thanks to you for doing this for us today. We're all extremely grateful. For me, it's been absolutely fascinating. And I just wanted to send a reminder to everybody here that we'll be hosting more of these types of webinars. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you again to Global Farm Pioneers for helping to support us to put this on. Do go to the farm2netzero.co.uk website if you'd like to find out more about sustainable food for food and farming, and join us next time. Thanks again, Nick. We will see you again soon, I'm sure. And thank you to all of you who have attended today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.